If I'd grabbed the mail on Tuesday instead of letting Danny do it, I might still believe my biggest problem was the water heater's warranty expiring. But it rained Tuesday, Danny offered, and I said, sure, thanks, see you Saturday for ribs. That was 6 weeks ago. Now I'm standing in the post office parking lot with a brass PO box key in one hand and a change of address receipt in the other, trying not to feel like I've just pulled the pin on something. The clerk had asked if I was sure I wanted mail redirected from a vacant house. I told her I've never been sure of anything less. The vacant house was 1842 Millbrook Road, the white bungalow next to our duplex, the one with plywood over the back window and crabgrass tall enough to hide a bicycle. I'd lived beside it for 11 years. First it belonged to Art, a retired mailman who put up a flag for every holiday including Arbor Day. Then his niece inherited it, rented it badly, and lost it to the bank in February. Since then, 1842 had been a sad little lesson in what happens when nobody owns the mess in front of them. Flyers turned to pulp on the porch. A raccoon tore the side vent. The mailbox had a red vacant card tucked behind the lid for months. Until last Saturday, I was mulching the hedge between our duplex and 1842 because I am the kind of man who says he's only going to trim one branch and ends up with a rented chipper. I bent down to pull a plastic grocery bag from the boxwood, and I noticed the mailbox on the vacant house had a fresh yellow sticker across the old red card. Return service requested. It wasn't on the mailbox at 1840, where Mrs. Alvarez received 3 catalogs a day and kept the mail carrier in Christmas cookies. It wasn't on ours at 1844, even though our duplex had 2 doors, 2 units, and twice the confusion. It was only on the dead house. Fresh enough that the corner hadn't curled, straight enough that somebody had placed it carefully. That was the first thing that didn't fit. The second came Tuesday when Danny picked up the mail. Danny Delgado and I owned the duplex at 1844 Millbrook together. He lived in Unit B with his wife Lena. I lived in Unit A alone, unless you counted the orange cat who visited my back steps and accepted food without commitment. Danny and I had bought the place 11 years earlier, when we were newly divorced, stubborn, and convinced real estate was the one adult decision we hadn't already ruined. We weren't brothers, but we had done brother work. Subfloor in July heat, takeout on overturned paint buckets, emergency plumbing, tax appeals, tenant disasters. When my father died, Danny stood in my kitchen and quietly loaded the dishwasher while everyone else told stories. So when it rained and he said, "I'll grab it, Jules," I said sure. He handed me my stack later. Electric bill, county water notice, dentist reminder addressed to Julian Vance or current resident, which felt personal, nothing strange. Nothing from Riverbend Credit Union, where we held the mortgage and the home equity line of credit we'd opened 5 years earlier as a cushion for repairs. The HELOC statements came quarterly. I knew because I kept a spreadsheet that would embarrass a less boring man. We had drawn on it twice legitimately, once for the roof after the hailstorm and once for the sewer lateral that collapsed during my niece's graduation dinner. Both draws required both signatures. Both payments came automatically from the duplex operating account. As far as I knew, the balance sat just under $22,000, annoying but manageable. 3 days after Danny grabbed the mail, I logged into the credit union portal to check whether the escrow adjustment had posted. The mortgage looked normal. The operating account looked normal. The HELOC balance did not. $59,812. I stared long enough for the website to log me out. When I called Riverbend, the first representative spoke to me like a man who had forgotten his own lunch order. "That's correct, Mr. Vance. There was a $37,000 draw in July, authorization on file from both borrowers." I didn't authorize a draw in July. A pause, keyboard clicks. The July draw package shows signatures for you and Mr. Delgado. I need you to say that again. She did. Yours and Mr. Delgado's. I was standing in Unit A's kitchen, looking through the wall as if I could see Danny's side. His truck was in the driveway. The man who had once held a flashlight in his teeth while I soldered a pipe under my sink was apparently attached to a signature I did not make. "Can you send me the authorization?" I asked. "As a co-borrower, you can request copies. We'll need you to complete a document request. It can be mailed to the address on the HELOC or picked up in branch." "The address on the HELOC," I said carefully. "What is it?" She read the mortgage address first, then said, "Statements and servicing notices are currently set to 1842 Millbrook Road." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because the alternative was making a sound I didn't want to hear come out of me. "I've never lived there," I said. I can open a servicing ticket. I bet you can. I thanked her because my mother raised me to be polite to people who are not personally ruining my life, hung up, and sat at the kitchen table with my hands flat on the wood. Who had been getting HELOC statements in my name at the foreclosed house next door. The easy answer sat 10 yards away behind a shared wall. But easy answers are how people get stupid. Rage makes terrible paperwork. Also, I didn't want it to be Danny. I wanted a bank error, a clerical mess, a piece of mail swallowed by the same bureaucratic swamp that once sent our property tax bill to a laundromat in Tulsa. For 15 minutes, I let myself believe that. Then I walked next door and looked again at the yellow sticker. The mailbox lid squealed when I opened it. Inside was grit, a dead spider, and the old red vacancy card shoved to the back. The yellow sticker was outside, bright and new. The mail carrier would see it. Anyone checking that box would see it. Anyone trying to keep certain mail from landing on my porch would see it. I did not knock on Danny's door. That was the first decent decision I made. Instead, I drove to the post office the next morning and rented a small PO box in my name. Then, I filled out a change of address request for Julian Vance at 1842 Millbrook Road to forward to that box. The clerk, a woman with silver glasses on a chain, looked at the form and then at my driver's license. You're redirecting mail from a vacant address. Mail addressed to me at a vacant address. This says you live at 1844. That's where I live. She looked tired in the specific way. Only public-facing workers and parents of toddlers look tired. You sure you want to do this? I've never been sure of anything less. She stamped the form and slid me the key. Box 119, give it a few days. I expected guilt when I walked out. Instead, I felt cold and practical. I had not opened Danny's mail. I had not broken into the vacant house. I had not guessed passwords or followed anyone. I had redirected mail addressed to me from an address where I did not live because someone had made that necessary. The waiting was worse than the discovery. Saturday came. Danny showed up on my side of the porch with ribs in a foil pan and a six-pack hooked in 2 fingers. He was 48, stocky hair going silver first at the temples, wearing the same work boots he wore for everything except weddings. He looked normal. That irritated me. Betrayal should have the decency to make a person glow radioactive. You still doing that vinegar mop? He asked. Still making people pretend they like it. He grinned. Lena says if you put sauce on before the last 20 minutes, you're a criminal. Lena has strong opinions for someone who thinks paprika is spicy. He laughed, and for one horrible second I almost told him. Right there, by the smoker, with the ribs sweating under foil and rain clouds gathering again. I almost said, explain the 37,000. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down and his face tightened before he turned it over. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, just my cousin being dramatic. Another detail filed itself away against my will. The first forwarded statement arrived at box 119 11 days after I filed the form. A white Riverbend envelope, addressed to Julian Vance at 1842 Millbrook Road, with a forwarding label slapped across the bottom. My hands shook so badly I had to sit in my truck before opening it. The statement showed the $37,000 draw dated July 14. Disbursement method, cashier's check. Memo line, borrower requested at branch. 2 days later, my document request was ready at Riverbend. The branch smelled like burnt coffee and carpet shampoo. A manager named Patris brought me into her office. She had kind eyes and the cautious posture of someone who had learned that kind eyes encourage people to yell at her. I printed the draw package, servicing address change, and signature card history, she said. Before I hand it over, if you dispute the authorization, our fraud department may need to get involved. I understand. Are you alleging Mr. Delgado forged your signature? I'm alleging I did not sign the July draw. She slid the folder across. The signature was almost perfect. That was somehow worse than if it had been sloppy. The loop on my J, the flat bottom of the V, even the slight downward slant I get when signing too fast. But one thing was wrong. I dot the J in Julian after I finished the whole signature. A stupid habit from 5th grade, when Sister Mary Catherine told me my name looked unfinished. The dot always sits slightly above and to the right because I come back for it. On the draw authorization, the dot was embedded in the curve, as if the pen had paused mid-stroke. I stared until the letters blurred. Patris cleared her throat, Mr. Vance. I need copies of everything. You have them. The address change. She pointed. The servicing address change had been submitted online in late March. Requester Daniel Delgado. Old address 1844 Millbrook Road. New mailing address for statements 1842 Millbrook Road. Reason borrower request. Can one borrower change the statement address for both? I asked. Her mouth tightened. The system allowed it shouldn't have without notice. But it did. Oh, yes. I drove home with the folder on the passenger seat like it might bite me. In the driveway, Danny was loading 2 blue storage totes into his truck. He waved. I waved back. That night, I spread the papers across my kitchen table and made 3 piles. What I knew, what I suspected, and what would hold up if a stranger hated me. It is humbling to realize how much of your life runs on trust instead of proof. Danny and I had a partnership agreement, downloaded from a legal website in 2013 and notarized at a UPS store by a man eating trail mix. But our real operating system was text messages, habit, and I'll cover it this month. He collected Unit B's rent because he lived there. I handled insurance because I hated surprises. We reconciled quarterly over coffee and pastries from the Mexican bakery on Lassen. For 11 years, the math had matched close enough. Close enough is where rot starts. I requested Riverbend's online access logs and got less than I hoped for dates, not IP addresses. I pulled every duplex bank statement for 2 years. I checked county records at midnight not because midnight helps but because anxiety respects no business hours. Nothing obvious turned up until the second forwarded statement landed in box 119. It showed smaller disbursements from the HELOC. $4,800, $6,200, $3,750. The descriptions weren't cashier's checks this time. Mercy Oak Residential MGMT. HOLLISTER Property Services. SANTA LUCIA Rental Trust. Hollister was 200 miles away. My first ugly thought was that Danny had another woman. Then I hated myself for how quickly my mind made a little television movie. Secret apartment, secret child, secret life with someone who liked early sauce on ribs. It would have been simpler in a way. Greed and lust have clean shapes. People understand them. Mercy Oak's website promised compassionate placement support for seniors and adults needing residential care. Santa Lucia Rental Trust owned a beige fourplex on Juniper Street in Hollister. 1 unit had been listed for rent in March. Tan carpet, white refrigerator, little fenced patio with 1 plastic chair. All of it was real. None of it explained why Danny had used money he had no right to take. The next receipt came from a human being, which made it messier. The county assessor's archived records listed the last occupant before foreclosure at 1842, Marlene Rusk, Art's niece. I remembered her vaguely as a sharp-faced woman who smoked on the porch in fuzzy slippers and once yelled at our tenants for parking too close to her curb. A little public records digging turned up a phone number. Marlene answered on the 5th ring. Who's this? My name is Julian Vance. I live next door to your old house on Millbrook. I don't own that dump anymore. I know, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm trying to clear up a bank error involving mail that went to 1842 after you moved. Silence. What kind of mails? Credit union statements addressed to me. I didn't open nothings. I'm not accusing you. I'm trying to understand why mail addressed to me would have been held there. I said I didn't open it. The way she said it told me there was another sentence hiding behind that one. Marlene, someone changed a mailing address on a loan in my name. If someone asked you to collect envelopes, I need to know. A lighter flicked, she exhaled. Danny said it was partnership papers. My mouth went dry. What did he ask you to do? He knew I was still checking the place after I moved. Bank hadn't changed locks right away. I was getting my last W-2 insurance stuff. He said some papers might come there by mistake because of a refinancing thing, and could I hold them instead of letting them get returned? Said you two were trying not to miss deadlines. Did he pay you? For gas, she said immediately. How much gas? Pause. 200 cash first time, then 50 when I found envelopes. Do you have anything showing that? What, like a receipt from being stupid? I'm not calling you stupid. You're thinking it. I was a little. I was also thinking of every time I'd accepted a half explanation because it came from someone I trusted. I have a deposit slip, she said finally. From the first cash, I put it in my account the same day because my nephew steals. It has his name written on the envelope. I might still have the envelope too. She agreed to meet at a Denny's halfway between us 2 days later. I bought coffee I didn't want and waited under a framed photo of pancakes. Marlene came in wearing a denim jacket and the expression of a woman prepared to deny every third word. She slid a folded bank envelope across the table. On the front, in Danny's blocky handwriting, was M. Rusk mail hold. Inside was a deposit slip for $200 cash dated April 3. She had also written down 3 dates when she'd picked up envelopes from the vacant house and texted Danny. She would not let me photograph her phone, but she read the messages aloud while I wrote them down. Danny, any more comes? Marlene, 2 white bank ones. Danny, hold, I'll grab after work. Looking at those words, my anger changed temperature. Before it had been hot and stupid. Now it cooled into something useful. Marlene wrapped both hands around her mug. He said you knew. I didn't. People always say that. I'm saying it because it's true. She looked out at the parking lot. Art liked you, said you fixed his gutter and didn't charge. He made me take zucchini. She smiled despite herself. He grew too much damn zucchini. That was when she made her choice. She could have left. Instead, she signed a short statement on notebook paper. Danny Delgado paid her to hold mail addressed to Julian Vance at 1842 Millbrook. She believed it involved partnership documents. She did not open the envelopes. I didn't push for more. People give you what they can live with. The 4th receipt was public. I searched our county recorder database by parcel number for the duplex. I expected the original deed, mortgage, and HELOC. I found those. I also found a quitclaim deed recorded in March, 3 weeks before the mailing address changed. It did not transfer the duplex outright. It was subtler, uglier. Danny had quitclaimed his individual interest, not mine, to an LLC called Delmar Family Holdings. The grantee address was a post office box in Hollister. The organizer listed with the Secretary of State was Daniel A. Delgado. Filing date, January. 3 months before the big draw, Danny had created an LLC, moved his half of our property interest into it, changed the HELOC statement address to the vacant house, and then signed my name on a draw. Premeditation has paperwork. I printed everything. I made copies. I bought a blue 3-ring binder from Staples and hated myself for feeling steadier once the betrayal had tabs. There was one piece I still needed, and it cost money I did not have lying around. A civil attorney named Sandra Maida took my consultation after I sent a short, tidy email that probably fooled her for 12 minutes into thinking I was calm. Her office was above a pharmacy and smelled faintly of eucalyptus. She read through my binder while I sat across from her trying not to bounce my knee. You've done a lot of work, she said. I'm a landlord. Suspicion is cheaper than plumbing, but not by much. She smiled once, then tapped the signature page. This is the hinge. You know it isn't yours. A judge doesn't know your 5th grade nun story. Sister Mary Catherine was terrifying. I'm sure, but you need a forensic document examiner. How much? For a preliminary report, $600 to $800 more if they testify. $600 to $800 was a transmission, half a property tax installment, 2 months of groceries if I stopped buying the coffee I liked and pretended lentils were a hobby. What happens if I go straight to the lender? I asked. They may freeze the line. They may refer it to special investigations. They may also decide both borrowers are in default until it's sorted. You could end up in a necessary fight that damages your credit and triggers attorney fees. So I pay for the report. You pay for the report if your goal is leverage before detonation. The examiner was a retired state lab analyst named Howard Pell who worked out of a converted sunroom behind his house. He asked for known samples of my signature from around the same time as the questioned document. I gave him mortgage papers, insurance forms, a notarized contractor agreement, and the original HELOC authorization. 2 weeks later, his report arrived. His conclusion was careful but devastating. The questioned signature was highly likely not written by Julian Vance. It showed evidence consistent with simulation and traceover, including unnatural hesitation in curved strokes and an anomalous pen stop at the initial J. There was Sister Mary Catherine translated into evidence. By then my theory had a shape. Danny had built a parallel life in Hollister. The money went to housing. The LLC address was there. The storage totes, the calls, the cousin being dramatic. I disliked how much relief I felt at being able to call it something ordinary, even sordid. Then the refrain came from Lena. She knocked on my door on a Thursday evening with a covered dish in both hands, which in our neighborhood meant condolence or too much casserole. Lena Delgado was a high school counselor with sharp black glasses and a laugh that could cut through a room. She and Danny had married 7 years earlier. We were friendly in the way shared walls make people friendly if they want peace. Packages, borrowed sugar, emergency toilet plungers, the occasional dinner. You eat, she asked. I was about to make an omelet, so technically no. She came in, set the dish on the counter, and looked at my table. I had been careful, too careful, apparently not enough. The binder was closed, but a printed Zillow page sat beside it face up. Juniper Street, Hollister. Lena's face changed so quickly that I felt ashamed before I knew why. Why are you looking at that? I considered lying. I was bad at it and tired of men in this duplex lying. It came up in some financial records. What financial records? Lena. What did he do? Not who, not what is that. What did he do? I pulled out a chair she did not sit. I can't tell you everything without making it worse, I said. Her laugh was small and bitter. Worse is a room we've been living in for years. Then she told me Danny had a sister. I know, Isabel, she came to the barbecue once years ago. She has schizoaffective disorder. Bad, not quirky bad, disappearing for 3 days bad, stopped meds because God told her the pills were cameras bad. Their mother managed it until she died. After that, Danny managed it by not managing it. I thought of the blue storage totes, the calls, Hollister. She's in a residential program. Supportive housing attached to one, Mercy Oak. It's expensive, not covered the way people think, and his family is useless. Why didn't he tell me? Because he's proud, because my parents think mental illness is a moral failure and money is how you keep score. Because when we got married, they helped us with debt on the condition that Danny stopped being dragged down by his family. Their words, not mine. Did you know he was using the HELOC? Her head snapped up. No. I believed her. The anger in her face had nowhere performative to stand. Lena, the money didn't just move. My signature was used. She sat then hard. Oh, Danny's. It was not a defense, it was grief. The secret family I had built in my head dissolved, and something sadder took its place. Danny had not been buying romance or a boat or a younger version of his life. He had been keeping his sister housed and medicated in another city while hiding the cost from his wife's controlling in-laws, from me, maybe from himself. The motive was human. The method was still fraud. That distinction mattered, it also did not save him. Lena stared at the casserole dish. My father reviews our accounts, she said. What? Long story, bad story. Danny's paycheck goes into our joint account. Mine too. My parents helped with my student loans years ago, and somehow that turned into quarterly advice dinners where my father asks to see our savings rate. I know how that sounds. It sounds exhausting. It is. I told Danny we could stop. He said it was fine. He always says it's fine. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. Is Isabel safe? I don't know. Are you going to the police? I haven't decided. She nodded once like someone accepting a sentence. Then she stood. Don't let him make you feel cruel for wanting your name back, she said. That was Lena's choice. She did not ask me to bury it. She did not ask me to spare her embarrassment. She gave me the truth he had withheld and walked back through the shared wall to whatever waited for her there. I slept badly for 3 nights. There is a particular cruelty in discovering that someone hurt you for a reason you can understand. Clean anger is energizing. Complicated anger asks you to carry furniture upstairs with one hand. I kept seeing Danny at 27, broke and optimistic, signing the purchase contract beside me with a pen the realtor gave us. I kept seeing him at 48, forging my name because he had decided my consent was an obstacle to someone else's survival. By Monday, I knew what I wanted. I did not want Danny in prison. That surprised me, and not because I am noble. Prison would not repay the HELOC. It would not help Isabel. It would turn Lena's life into a crater and might trigger lender action that could take the duplex down with all of us. But I also did not want a handshake apology and a promise. I had built enough rental stairs to know when wood is rotten. You don't paint it, you replace the support. Sandra drafted the letter. I paid her in 2 installments and ate a lot of lentils. The demand identified the unauthorized draws, forged authorization, diverted statements, paid mail holding arrangement, LLC transfer, and forensic report. It demanded that Danny acknowledge the debt as personal to him and his LLC, execute a recorded lien against his interest in the duplex and any interest held by Del Mar Family Holdings, surrender unilateral authority to request draws or address changes, cooperate with Riverbend to freeze the line pending dual in-person authorization, and begin restitution on a structured schedule. The alternative paragraph was short. Lender fraud referral to Riverbend's Special Investigations Unit, civil fraud suit, partition action, and evaluation of additional claims involving the LLC. Sandra told me the point was not to impress him with Latin, it was to show him the map of the cliff. Record the meeting if your state allows one-party consent, she said. It does. Do not threaten criminal prosecution in exchange for money. You say these are the civil remedies you're prepared to pursue and the institutional reports you are obligated to make if he does not cure the fraud. Then stop talking. Stop talking is not my best event. Practice. I practiced in my kitchen to the orange cat who remained unimpressed. I asked Danny to come over on a Wednesday at 6. I told him it was about the duplex books. That was true in the same way a house fire is about lighting. He arrived carrying a manila folder which almost broke my heart. Some part of him knew. You want coffee? I asked. No. We sat at the kitchen table where we had once sorted receipts for tile, paint, smoke detectors, plumber invoices, every ordinary expense of a shared life. My phone was face down near the napkin holder, recording. I slid the demand letter across first, then the binder. Danny read the first page, his mouth opened, closed. He flipped to the signature report, then Marlene's statement, then the LLC filing. His hand stayed steady until he reached the Riverbend draw authorization. Then his thumb rubbed the edge of the paper so hard it bent. Jules, he said. I held up one hand. If he said my name like a friend, I might lose the thread. You're going to read all of it, then I'm going to explain your options. He read. The refrigerator hummed. On the other side of the wall, a cabinet closed in his unit. Lena, maybe, or just the house settling around us, tired of carrying secrets. When Danny finished, he did not deny it. That was the first mercy he gave me. Isabel was going to get discharged, he said. They said if she lost placement, she'd go back on the county list. Months, maybe a shelter, maybe jail if she had an episode in public. I tried loans, cards, I tried selling my truck, but I was upside down. You forged my signature. I was going to put it back. You changed the statements to a vacant house. I panicked after the first draw. You paid Marlene to hold my mails. I told myself it was temporary. You moved your half into an LLC before any of it. He flinched. That was to keep Lena's father from seeing assets if he started digging. Listen to yourself. I know. No, I don't think you do. My voice rose and I forced it back down. You didn't ask me to help your sister. You didn't tell your wife the truth. You decided the cleanest solution was to use my name like a spare key. His eyes filled. Danny was not a crier. I had seen him tear up exactly once at his mother's funeral. I couldn't lose Isabel, he said. You were willing to lose me. That landed. He looked down. I pushed the letter closer. Here's what happens now. You sign a written acknowledgement of the unauthorized draws. You sign a lien against your interest and the LLC's interest in the duplex. You cooperate with Riverbend to remove any unilateral draw or address change ability. You make payments on the schedule in that letter. If you don't, I send the full packet to Riverbend Special Investigations, file suit, and ask Sandra to pursue every civil remedy available. He stared at the page. If Riverbend finds out, they may find out anyways. Isabel's housing. Isabel's housing is not mine to secure with a forged signature. He put both hands over his face. I wanted to comfort him. That was the awful reflex. 2 decades of friendship do not vanish because evidence says they should. They sit there like phantom limbs. I'm not trying to destroy your sister's care, I said. That's why there's a repayment structure instead of a grenade, but I will not be trapped in your lie. He nodded without looking up. Does Lena know? She knows enough. He made a sound I still think he deserves the privacy of not having described. Sandra had arranged for a mobile notary to arrive at 7. That detail made Danny look at me with something like admiration and resentment mixed together. You planned this, he said. Oh yes. I guess I taught you to measure twice. Despite myself, I laughed once. It came out ugly. Don't make this charming. The notary was a college kid named Brandon with a stamp, a tidy beard, and no idea he was walking into the end of a friendship. Danny signed the acknowledgement. He signed the lien documents for himself and as managing member of Del Mar Family Holdings. He signed the Riverbend authorization restrictions. He initialed every page with a hand that shook only at the end. When Brandon left, Danny stayed seated. I'm sorry, he said. I believe you. His face lifted, hopeful in a way that made me angry all over again. I believe you're sorry, I said. That doesn't tell me what to do with you. We sat in silence until the old orange cat appeared outside the back door and yelled for dinner. It was such a normal sound that both of us turned toward it. For years, Danny had called that cat the auditor because he showed up whenever receipts were out. Still feeding him, Danny asked. Somebody has to keep him corrupt. Danny almost smiled. Then didn't. The lien was recorded at 10:15 the next morning. Sandra emailed me the confirmation with the county instrument number. I printed it and put it in the blue binder. Then I called Riverbend with Danny on the line and changed the HELOC settings so future draws required both of us in person, with photo ID, and statements sent electronically to separate verified addresses. Patris handled the call. Her voice stayed professional, but when we finished, she said, Mr. Vance, I'm glad you brought this in before it got worse. Before it got worse. I wondered what version of worse she imagined. Numbers on a screen, foreclosure, police, two men on a porch pretending ribs tasted the same. The payments began the next month. The first one arrived by cashier's check, hand-delivered in an envelope Danny left under my door because facing me had become a task neither of us had the strength to perform casually. Then automatic transfers started from his personal account. He sold the truck and bought an old Corolla with one blue door. Lena stopped attending the quarterly advice dinners with her parents. I knew because one Saturday afternoon I heard her on the porch, voice steady, saying into the phone, Dad, our finances are no longer a committee. That mattered not to the ledger maybe, but to the story underneath it. Isabel stayed in Hollister. Lena told me once months later, while we were both taking out trash bins at dusk and pretending timing had nothing to do with it. She's stable, Lena said. I'm glad. Danny's attending a family support group down there. Good. He wanted me to tell you. I nodded. He wanted to tell you himself, she added. I looked across the driveway. Danny stood by his Corolla holding a trash bag, waiting for the moment to pass so he could move without choosing whether to speak. He lifted one hand halfway. I lifted mine back the same distance. Two men waving from opposite shores of a very small ocean. The duplex changed after that, though nothing visible did. Same two front doors, same porch light that attracted moths, same cracked walkway I kept meaning to replace. Unit B still smelled like garlic and laundry soap on Sundays. Unit A still had my spreadsheet, my overwatered basil, my stack of library books renewed too many times. But the porch no longer felt like neutral ground. For 11 years, that porch had been where Danny and I solved things. We argued about whether to raise rent by $50 or $25. We drank beer after snaking the main line. We watched a tenant's kid learn to ride a bike in wobbling circles while Danny shouted, "Look where you want to go, not where you're scared of falling," which was better advice than either of us managed to follow. Now, if Danny came out with recycling while I was watering geraniums, one of us usually found a reason to go back inside. Not always. Sometimes we managed weather talk. Sometimes we discussed repairs with the careful courtesy of divorced people at a graduation. The work continued because property does not care about your feelings. Gutters clog for the betrayed and betrayer alike. The emotional cost was not explosive. It was erosion. I missed calling him when the garbage disposal made a noise like a fork in a blender. I missed his terrible fantasy football advice. I missed the version of myself who had not learned to read his pauses as evidence. That was the part nobody warns you about. Receipts prove what happened. They do not restore the person you were before you needed them. Every month I logged the restitution payment. Every quarter, Riverbend sent statements to my real address and to the PO box I kept longer than necessary. The HELOC balance fell slowly. Too slowly for justice maybe, but exactly as fast as money moves in the real world when nobody wins the lottery and everyone still has to buy tires. Marlene called once to ask if I had gotten that mess fixed. I told her fixed was an ambitious word but improved. She said Art would have told me to plant mint by the fence because it keeps ants away. I told her Art knew mint spreads like gossip, and had probably been trying to start trouble. She laughed and hung up before sentiment could catch her. Howard Pell sent me an invoice marked paid. Sandra sent me a holiday card with a printed snowman and a handwritten note, keep your originals. Lawyers are not poets, but sometimes they know the right blessing. 3 months after the lien was filed, I found myself standing in front of 1842 Millbrook Road with a putty knife in my hand. The bank had finally hired a preservation crew, the grass was cut, the plywood was replaced with a proper window. Someone had pressure washed the porch, revealing gray boards instead of black grime. The house still looked empty but less abandoned. There is a difference, empty can become something else. The mailbox remained crooked on its post, the red vacant card was gone, the yellow sticker was still there, faded at the edges but stubbornly attached. Return service requested. I had walked past it dozens of times since everything began. Each time I felt that old question tug at me. Who had been getting HELOC statements in my name at the foreclosed house next door? At first the question had been a trapdoor, then a trail, then a binder, then a lien, then monthly payments and porch silence and a friendship reduced to necessary sentences. I slid the putty knife under one corner of the sticker. It resisted, of course it did, cheap things often cling hardest. I worked slowly, peeling back a quarter inch, then another. The paper separated from the aluminum with a faint tearing sound. Underneath, the mailbox was cleaner than the rest, a bright rectangle protected from weather by the very lie that had marked it. Danny came out while I was finishing. I heard his door open then stop. I did not turn around right away. Need help, he asked. The question hung there, ordinary and impossible. I looked at the last strip of yellow in my fingers, then at the scar of clean metal on the box. No, I said, but not sharply, I've got it. He nodded, I could see it from the corner of my eye. I peeled off the final piece and rolled the sticker into a tight little tube. For the first time in a year, the aluminum was clean. It's not new, not undamaged, just clean enough to show exactly where the sticker had been.